Good morning, and welcome to the release of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Peoples Indiana Black Academic Excellence Plan. I'm Barbara Bolling-Williams, your moderator for today and the Indiana State Conference president. We are so happy you're here with us. Thank you so much for coming. A comprehensive guide for state and local leaders to substantially improve K-12 academic results for Indiana's Black students. It was developed and designed alongside of the NAACP Education Committee with special help from the Indianapolis branch and their Education Committee and other concerned community members. From creating a climate in Indiana for Black academic excellence to the 15 strategies to close the achievement opportunity gap. We will improve academic outcomes for Black students, hold those accountable for their continued role in perpetuating the disparities between Black students and their counterparts, whether actively or passively, and change the dynamics of overall performance of outcomes of Black students whose overall performance on state assessment is markedly lower. Finally, to answer the question why, Black students deserve the best. Our state cannot be content with celebrating the achievement success of Black students who are deemed proficient, nor should we be surprised that these high-performing students were capable of somehow overcoming the odds that block success for the majority of our Black students. This success is what we should all expect of all students. We have some great people waiting to make opening remarks this morning, but I would be remiss if I did not personally thank the following individuals. Deborah Vance, our Indiana State Conference Chairperson for Education. Crystal Radcliffe, President of the Greater Indianapolis Branch. Mr. Gary Holland, Chairperson of the Greater Indianapolis Branch Education Committee. And Dr. Gwen, Kelley, Lead Editor, and Ms. Carol Craig, Co-Editor. And absolutely, we could not do any of this without Jody Paris, the Indianapolis Communications Guru and Chairperson. Thank you, Jody. Our speakers this morning will include Dr. Adora Nweze. Dr. Nweze is a member of the National Board of Directors for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and she chairs our National Education Committee and hails from Florida. So we are welcoming to Adora this morning. Dr. Gwen Kelley, you'll see some names that'll be repeated because they have been such an integral part in the preparation and actual birth of this report and plan, who is the lead editor, again, from the Greater Indianapolis NAACP. Dr. Alicia Johnson, Superintendent of the Indianapolis Public Schools. Representative Robin Shackleford from Indianapolis, and Indiana Black Legislative Caucus Chair. Representative Greg Porter from Indianapolis, who is the ranking minority member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Senator J.D. Ford from Indianapolis, ranking minority member of the Senate Education and Career Development Committee. Mr. Keith Gamble, President, Indiana State Teachers Association. Mr. Mark Russell, Director of Education and Family Services, the Indianapolis Urban League. And we've assembled some leaders from around the state who are our very own NAACP leaders. And they are joining us to assist in responding to questions. And of course, Ms. Deborah Vance, who is our state education chairperson again, Ms. Carol Craig, the plan co-editor with the Greater Indianapolis branch, Ms. Shanta Barnes, the education committee for the Greater Indianapolis branch, Ms. Janice Lavelle, who is the education chair from the Jeffersonville Clark County NAACP branch, Dr. Marlon Mitchell, who is the education chair for the Gary NAACP branch. And without further ado, I want to welcome again Dr. Adora Nweze from the state of Florida and our chair of our National Education Committee. Dr. Adora Nweze, welcome.
Thank you so much. It is such a delight to be here again. You know, I was here when you first started with this, and you were kind enough to invite me, and I thought, wow, look at all they're doing. But I had no idea the plan would be so very thorough and so much needed. You know, as you know, not only Black children in Indiana, but all over this country, that we're looking for answers to help our children to understand, yes, you are absolutely right, that they are smart, that they are understanding things, and we don't know that they know because we haven't found a way to allow them to tell us. And to, as we work with them, and the ideas that you have, the strategies you have, all of what you say in the plan is certainly something that we all need. Now, when you see a part of your plan in Florida, don't call me, because you will know that I have switched Indiana from Florida. But you know, it's such a delight. And I just love having this discussion. We need to really do this as often as we can in every state. So I am wanting you to know that you have developed a model that we all can use. And I just am so proud of it, that it's coming from Indiana, where I have been before, and I'd like to come back again. Madam President.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. President Adora Nweze. And I neglected to say that you are also the state conference president for the state of Florida.
Yes.
So you wear many hats, especially that lovely one you have on this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. Moving to Dr. Gwen Kelley, who has just been phenomenal in the development of this plan. And she's, I believe, is going to give you an overview. Dr. Kelley.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for attending the press event with us today as the state NAACP conference presents its Indiana Black Academic Excellence Plan to the community as a whole. While copies of the draft have been circulating for a while, we are in the final stage now of letting everyone see the plan that we believe will make a difference for our children. I'm thrilled to see so many leaders and committed community members come together today to address the issues that are critical to the welfare, safety, health, and common good of our state. This plan was conceived as some of the members of the NAACP met with the Department of Education leaders and other officials in the governor's office to discuss the achievement of our Black children throughout the state. We saw a need for a plan for action that did not exist prior to our developing this particular plan. We believe that addressing these needs must be a priority for our children to have the change that is needed throughout the state. The economic and social well-being of our community rests on us having to develop the minds of our children and to develop them to the fullest potential. This plan provides something for everyone to know the plan and how to act on it. Government leaders, legislators across both aisles, community members, educators, and yes, our youth and parents. Let me proceed with a very quick overview of the plan. These are the members in our community who are responsible for the plan, that when you get it, you'll be able to see that there are educators as well as other concerned citizens who came together to ensure that the plan came to fruition. What the plan seeks to do. We want this plan to be a guide for Indiana leaders and community members to address the clearly urgent and pressing goals to make dramatic changes in academic achievement for Indiana's Black children. Our ultimate goal is to eliminate disproportionalities, resulting in negative inequities and negative outcomes for our Black children as measured through the test that the state gives. Why? This data speaks volumes. It represents the achievement of our Black students' proficiency on I-STEP and on I-Learn data in the 2021 school year at the close of the year. And you can see from the data that our children are performing lower than everyone else. This is a problem, and if it's not addressed, it will not be fixed. We'll continue to talk about it and we'll see no action. We started developing the plan with some foundational principles about what we believe about Black children. We are concerned about the welfare of all children, but we believe that by paying particular attention to our Black students, it will make a difference for all students. There are 12 principles for everyone working with Black students to understand and incorporate. We want all of our children to have opportunity and access to equitably, highly funded quality education. We want our families and the community to have easy access and user-friendly data. We want everyone to be held to high expectations while highly engaging, culture-responsive instruction and rigorous curriculum. We want to see our children have great appropriate expectations and work with problem solving and critical thinking skills laced in everything that they do. We want our children to be independent learners, readers and thinkers, problem solvers. And we want them to be independent learners, whereas now many of them are dependent on the school system and the quality of the education that they're receiving from their teachers. We want them to be moved toward that independent level. We want them to have the highest quality educators. And we would like for them to be ready for all of this to happen in a safe, positive, orderly school environment, free of excessive and overly harsh punitive disciplinary practices. And we want them to attain the highest standards on performance tests. We're not saying do away with tests. We're saying that we want to bring up the achievement so that all cohorts, all groups within the cohort are performing equitably. We want to realize double-digit increases in test results based on ESSA and the goals set by ESSA by the Department of Ed. We want our children to be proud and knowledgeable of the Black history, culture, and heritage that has contributed to the foundation of the whole American society. We want our children to have self-identity, gifts, and talents that will help them thrive in society. And we want them to be able to be competitive in the job market and assume leadership roles in the community. We want our children to be groomed to be proud advocates for the rights of Black people as they assume the courageous responsibility of promoting racial justice. Those foundational principles are something that we believe every district should adopt. The plan itself includes two key components. First, key steps that are happening right now in the process as we've been talking with leaders across the state and negotiating, and then 15 strategies that will help close the academic achievement gap within the school system and in homes and with our youth. 4 things are very important. We want to be sure that the ESSA plan, as it is written, is really being implemented and the goals addressed within it. We want to establish regular meetings for a cultural competency and ethnic studies committee. These were in place within the last year or so, and with the change of legislation and other legislative priorities, this has not happened, and we want to see this reinstated. We want to evaluate and revise state data displays And this is happening now, even as some of us who are on this call have been asked to review the new data dashboard displays. We want to be sure that they are culture responsive and that they meet the concerns that we've been having about data over the years. And we want to make sure that there is a hired legislative DOE equity officer at the Department of Ed. As I said before, these strategies are targeted toward different members of our community, government decision makers, and then some focusing on the school and community. I already spoke about the 4 key steps for creating a climate of excellence. There are 15 strategies that we think will also help to close the achievement gap, establishing this as a priority, addressing the whole needs of students, providing equitable funding, acknowledging the impact of COVID, eliminating the digital divide, mandating full-day kindergarten and offering full-day pre-K, with even a change in the age that children are expected to come to kindergarten. We want to provide appropriate professional development for everyone from DOE all the way to the staffs in the schools. Empower teachers to cultivate academic success and engage parent and student voices and community. We want highly effective teachers within each school, meeting the needs of high need students. And we want to make sure that we're hiring underrepresented teachers of color. And we want to eliminate the use of high stakes tests as a sole measure of school accountability. Additionally, we want to make sure that every district is prioritizing and addressing equity issues within their district. And we want to create equitable communities through collaboration with the community. And number 15, we want to be sure that every district and school is following the law that says that every school must have a cultural competency plan. Within this plan, there are 11 areas that we think that every plan should have in order to be effective, including effective leadership that believes that cultural competency is something that needs to happen within their schools. Within the appendix of the plan, there's a bibliography because this is a research-based document. There are benchmark assessments for progress that we will be using in the next coming 3 years to measure our progress in implementing the plan. And there's all of the Indiana codes as of 2020 that are related to cultural competency are listed within the bibliography within the appendix. And there are data sets within the plan that show where our children are falling in comparison to other cohorts. So what next? We would like for our NAACP local branch representatives and chairpersons will be ensuring that the documents are posted on their websites for easy access. Local representatives will also be working in their community to inform them about upcoming meetings that they will be planning about knowing about the document and sharing more about it. State NAACP leadership will be continuing to meet with government leaders and legislators to discuss and further implement the plan. Community members are asked to become familiar with the plan and support any upcoming initiatives that occur. And community members and parents will be able to check with their school officials in the fall to see if they are aware of the plan and its content, implementation, and execution, because NAACP members will be contacting each district within their sphere and making sure that they are aware of the plan. Together, we must strive to ensure that our children have the opportunities they need and deserve that lead to Black academic excellence. We hope that this plan will be widely shared and used as a foundation to bring about dramatic changes in our educational system across the state. As our Black children do better, as I said before, all of the strategies in the plan will lead to a wider success for all students. Thank you for helping to share the message of increasing the achievement and opportunity for Black academic success and excellence. It's been a long time coming, but we are expecting a statewide change. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Gwen Kelley. She has made this presentation a couple of times before in preparation for this very moment that today. And it's simple, but it is effective and it's complex and it must be done properly. And you are all here to make sure that that happens. Before I move forward with our next speaker, I just wanted to make a correction. I believe I said, I pronounced Ms. Barnes' name incorrectly. It actually is Ms. Shantae Barnes. So I wanted to correct that before moving on. Our next speaker, which I'm praying that I pronounced her name correctly, is Dr. Alicia Johnson. She will she is the Superintendent of the Indianapolis Public Schools, and welcome, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Bolling-Williams. You did pronounce it correctly, so thank you for that. Very much appreciated. Good morning, everyone. I am pleased and excited to be here alongside President Bolling-Williams and other members of the Indiana State Conference of the NAACP for this important announcement today. As I read the plan for the Indiana Black Academic Excellence for our students, I was excited and pleased to see so many parts of this plan that aligned with priorities that we have also identified in Indianapolis Public Schools, that we are aggressively pursuing as a part of our 2025 strategic plan. When we look at the academic data of Black students in our state, we should all feel compelled to do something about it. Speaking for my team at Indianapolis Public Schools, we have made a commitment to do whatever it takes to cultivate the conditions for success for our students. And that looks like continuing to advocate for equitable funding at the State House. That means thinking about all of the needs of our students and providing resources like mental health supports, food and clothing pantries, tutoring opportunities for students, along with bridging the digital divide with access to technology at school, the internet at home, along with excellent high quality instruction that is taking place in the classroom every day. That looks like the launch of our Proving What's Possible campaign, which is about strengthening IPS as a destination district for educators, in which it's a great place to work and to grow for all of our teachers, but especially for teachers who come from underrepresented backgrounds, who we know are so crucial for our students to see, particularly considering that 3/4 of the students we serve in Indianapolis Public Schools are students of color. I look forward to our continuing engagement with the NAACP to support the efforts to eliminate the disparities in the opportunities and performance of Black students across our state. We should not accept as normal the data that overwhelmingly demonstrates we must act with boldness and with urgency to support all students in our state, particularly our African-American students. And as a school district, we know we cannot do this work alone. And so I am especially grateful for strong partners like the NAACP, particularly the Greater Indianapolis chapter and our community who stand alongside our schools as we pursue excellence with equity. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and I'm excited for the work as we move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And I see you get it. She said we have to do this with an urgency. And she is absolutely right. Thank you again. Our next speaker will be Representative Robin Shackleford, who chairs the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, and they have continually been an outstanding partner with the NAACP through the years. Representative Shackleford.
Thank you, President Bolling, and good morning to everyone. I am so excited to be here and to hear this plan. Thank you to the NAACP and your community team members for bringing this vital report to our attention. I have reviewed the Indiana Black Academic Excellence Plan, which seeks to close the achievement and opportunity gap across Indiana. First, I applaud educators and education advocates who work tirelessly to bring up the next generation of thinkers. The drastic gap in our assessments is disheartening. To learn that 74% of Black third graders pass their assessments, while only 24.7% of Black 10th graders pass theirs. lets me know that this plan is needed now more than ever. I absolutely agree with the steps in the plan, including closing this gap as a top priority for the state, addressing equity in school funding, hiring teachers of color, and pulling away from high-stakes testing for school accountability are all fantastic. The 15 strategies outlined in the NAACP's plan are a start, and the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus is here to help. Next session, we do plan to make education as our top priority for our legislative agenda. So I am excited that this plan is coming out now. We are standing with the NAACP and their community partners on this journey to improve the state of education for our Black children. It's comforting to know that this plan is in motion. And I believe that working with the Indiana Department of Education, Indiana General Assembly, and Governor Holcomb's office to execute it will lead to success. Think of the reformation that could happen with this plan. Addressing equity within our education system can make all of the difference. Truly then will all students be the center of their excellence academic journey. Again, thank you to the NAACP, and we are looking forward to cultivating the academic success of Black and Brown children across the state.
Thank you so much, Representative Shackleford. You have always been a great partner with the NAACP. And another great partner, legislative partner, and our next speaker is Representative Greg Porter. Representative Porter.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and to each and every one of you. I cannot illuminate my enthusiasm more than what has transpired in regards to this much needed and on time report. I want to address it a little bit from a fiscal standpoint, being a Ways and Means person. And having a program like this or action steps has to have some meaningful funding. And in order to address the achievement and opportunity gap here in the state of Indiana. And with those gaps, also address the goals and the outcomes of this said report. We can have success. And what you put forth through this report are the ingredients of a success for African-American children, Black children within this state of Indiana and within our country also, because it can be illuminated, as it was said, across this country. Cultural competency, something that we've worked on a lot in this Black Caucus, and cultural responsiveness is in teacher preparation and professional development and training is very important, as well as the evaluation. This means developing dollars for professional development, dollars to help teachers and support individuals in regards to the outcome for our children. There are strengths in the numbers of having professional development and encouragement with educators. But I think we have to also go back to creating funding formulas that fairly and equitably support all students, regardless of their geography, the social or economic background. And spending these formulas that we have to do with lawmakers is to have the formulas that move to address these shortcomings. And that is also done with the complexity index. I would encourage my colleagues in the next biennium to establish representation committees to develop and monitor and review allocation spending formulas with oversight and effectiveness. Lawmakers also must build accountability mechanisms for school decision makers and specific attention with and addressing our vulnerable children. Looking to double, and I say it again, double the funding for complexity index in 2023 funding formula and monitor the effectiveness of how the complexity index funding is spent with the benchmarks of success. For early learners, there's no excuses. We have studied pre-K. We talked about early learning for decades, and the results are in. We just need to fund it, and the mechanisms to do that need to happen right away. we are behind the 8 ball. Pre-K to all 4-year-olds, no matter how much it costs, we know that the return on investment is very high. 3-year-olds, by the second year of the biennium, we would like to move money toward 3-year-olds. Beyond the short-term horizon, establish a state fund education trust fund for all historically neglected students. I want to say that again. Establish a state-funded educational trust account or fund for all historical neglected students. Make more money to follow the child, really follow the child, by allocating more specifically to students that need a duration of their public school education experience all the way to graduation. We have put together legislation before that asked for $300 million to follow, to help address those students here in our community. We are, as a state, we have about $17 billion in the biennium per year that we spend for K-12 education. Even though we spend $17 billion, ladies and gentlemen, that's like 37th in the country. Think about that. Our pre-K funding is 41st worst in this country. Pre-K funding is 41st worst in this country. So as we continue to look at addressing the achievement opportunity, we have to understand that we are losing ground to other states in regards to teacher recruitment, teacher preparation, and retainment here in the state of Indiana. We raised our concern, was happy about minimum of $40,000 per teacher, a starting salary. However, Mississippi now is $45,000. We need to think about that. We are still losing ground. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for letting me be a part of this momentum of this release of this great document. Thank you, Madam President and members.
Wow, Representative Porter, you are opening up all of our eyes. They tell you that if you want to know where someone's priority is, see where they spend their money. And it is clear that the priority here in the state of Indiana has not been with education and our children. But that's what we're here to do, is we're here to change that narrative. Thank you so much. Your comments were eye-opening. Moving to another legislator, Senator J.D. Ford, who has joined us, and we're looking forward to your comments, Senator Ford. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam President. Good morning to everybody on the call. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. I'm honored to have joined the conversation, especially with the distinguished folks on this panel. First, I'd like to commend the NAACP and all the other stakeholders for coming together and releasing this very thoughtful plan. I know myself and my other colleagues on the call are working towards the same goals that's much outlined in the plan. I'm glad to have this plan, this roadmap, this blueprint. We have a document that outlines best practices. Because right now I feel like the education policy or the agenda for our state is dictated to us by whatever the hot button topic issues that's dominating the headlines. Take House Bill 1134, for example, in this past legislative session. But we must refocus our efforts because our kids depend on us, and I think this plan helps us do just that. As the ranking minority member on the Senate's Education and Career Development Committee, I picked out a few key areas that I'd like to highlight now. Full day kindergarten and pre-K. As Representative Porter and others mentioned, this is, to me, one of the most important strategies that you all have highlighted because it's identified that maintaining and mandating full day kindergarten and offering full day pre-K is going to be a benefit for our state and for our kids. We know that this is not only beneficial for our kids' development, but it also lowers childcare costs for families and helps parents maintain a more consistent work schedule. Meeting this need alone will be a heavy lift, as Indiana ranks 40th in the nation for the percentage of 3- and 4-year-olds in school. And we know that failing to invest in early childhood education especially burdens communities of color. Addressing the needs of the whole child is another strategy that I saw in the plan. And we know that our students are better served when we address all of their needs, instead of just emphasizing on their ability to pass a test. Whether you call it social and emotional learning, life skills, interpersonal skills, or whatever you'd like to call it, we need to be making sure that our youth are learning the skills like self-management, self-awareness, decision-making, interpersonal abilities. Social and emotional learning is under attack in our state, and we need to bolster it. We have so many studies that show that social and emotional learning is a positive thing for our students. I'm particularly focused on ensuring that all of our schools have the information and resources to pair these skills with skills to help our students succeed in higher education, job training, and the workforce. Diversifying our teacher population was another topic that I saw. We must continue to invest in funding in K-12 education and teacher compensation. Specifically, we need to diversify our teachers to look more like our student population. Despite accounting for nearly 34% of the student population, only 7% of Hoosier teachers are people of color. Research shows that having teachers of color benefits all students, but especially low-income Black children, who are nearly 40% less likely to drop out of high school if they have at least one Black teacher in elementary school. That's why I fully support initiatives to encourage and incentivize more young people of color to become teachers. We talked a little bit about the internet access and the digital divide, but we've got to make sure that all of our students have internet access at home. We are hearing stories of students going to McDonald's to sit in the lobby to do their homework. This is often an issue for rural communities, but it's also an issue for the district that I represent, an urban suburban area. It's prevalent in our cities, where tens of thousands of children lack in-home internet connection. Ensuring we bridge that digital divide will help make us sure that every kid can do the homework. And we can do that with $100 million in broadband funding provided by President Biden's infrastructure law. Now that we have this plan, it's time to implement it. I will do my part in sending this plan to the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, as well as the chairman of the House Education Committee. I hope that the community helps us in our call for getting much of this plan implemented and give it a hearing in the next legislative session. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts, and I'll throw it back to you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Senator Ford, for joining us and for those comments and for your commitment to help us move this plan forward. We really appreciate that, and that's exactly what we need. Our next speaker will be Keith Gamble, President of the Indiana State Teachers Association. What a wonderful segue when Senator Ford says we need to encourage more teachers of color going into education. Thank you so much.
We certainly do, and thank you very much, Madam President. Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith Gamble. I have taught for more than 30 years, mostly as a middle school music and theater teacher in Evansville. And I currently serve as the president of the Indiana State Teachers Association. ISTA is proud to stand with the NAACP today in support of their state plan for Black academic excellence. Our association is founded on core principles that are written and adopted by our members. These principles are rooted in support for public education. We believe that public education is the cornerstone of a democratic society, which all students have the fundamental right to the best public education policy. Because of a lack of resources and inequitable state funding, many Black students are not receiving the best education as possible. This is why we need the strategy and goals outlined in the NAACP's state plan. The state's experimentation with corporate education reform and privatization has failed students of color. We need to prioritize and lift our state's public schools And we believe the strategies in the NAACP state plan can help all Hoosier children, especially our Black students. We all have a role in achieving Black academic excellence, including the members of ISTA. And that's why we are here today to speak in support of the NAACP's efforts and to be a partner in this work. If consistently implemented, this plan has the promise to see positive results and the success of our Black children. Indiana needs a plan that includes all stakeholders, and we need to get to work right away, as these children cannot wait. We believe state leaders should study this state plan and work in collaboration with the NAACP and its partners to work toward these ambitious goals starting in the 2023 school year. We thank the leaders of the Indiana NAACP for creating this plan, the community team members for their contributions, and including the input of ISTA and educators. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gamble. And we're continuing to welcome that partnership with the Indiana State Teachers Association. And now, Mr. Mark Russell, the Director of Education and Family Services with the Indianapolis Urban League. Welcome, Mr. Russell.
Thank you, President Bolling. I know I've got the cleanup position here, so I'll try to be expeditious for our patient members of the press. This plan is indeed a very thorough, detailed, and well-researched approach to the educational challenges, especially facing children of color and Black students in the state. Just yesterday, the Kids Count data book was released for 2022, and Senator Ford was there in the Senate chamber, along with several other leaders from across the state. It is ironic that the highest ranked evaluative part of that study found that our education was 17th in the country in terms of wellness. But we know that that is misleading and inadequate, especially as students of color and young students, preschool students, are concerned. We need to take this plan very seriously. We need to stop being sidetracked by issues that are not relevant and are just political games that are being played upon students who are the most vulnerable. We at the Urban League were ready to deal with the multitude of issues surrounding inadequate performance on standardized tests and the opportunity gaps. That was to be our goal last year, until we were sidetracked by the meaningless discussions surrounding CRT, which is not even taught in Indiana schools. We must embrace this research, and we must not be content with being mediocre. And we would encourage the members of the press to seriously look and examine at the issues and the challenges facing our most vulnerable students, and not to be sidetracked by political games. This is life-threatening, and it endangers our community. So we encourage you to do your job as we try to do ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Russell. You're right on point. You were right on point, and you did a yeoman's job doing the cleanup role. Now is the time for us to answer questions from the media who has been kind enough to join us this morning. And I do want to remind everyone that, in addition to our speakers who have greeted you this morning, we do have some other members from around the state who are on hand to help answer questions that the press may have. Carol Craig, one of the plan co-editors, Shantae Barnes, part of the Indianapolis Education Committee, Janice Lavelle from Jeffersonville, Clark County, NAACP, Dr. Marlon Mitchell from Gary, and And of course, we're just here to make sure that this plan gets the attention that it deserves and absolutely needs for our children. Eric Whittle from WFYI is our first question. I think you.
Yeah, Eric, would you just want to ask your question?
Oh, sure.
Just unmute yourself. Thanks.
Are you able to hear me? Yeah. Yeah, my first question was, your first strategy is addressing the academic opportunity gap as a priority by state leaders. So how do you actually want to see that implemented by the governor, and what resources would you want the state to put behind this?
I'll start out by answering that, and then I'll ask Carol Craig to join in with an answer. We have been having this discussion with the governor's office, the education person, who now is our state education secretary, and also with the Department of Ed with previous administrations throughout the years. And so this is ongoing, and now we want to see things really implemented that we've been talking about by continuing discussions and by actually seeing actual practices change. This, I'm going to talk about the legislation for 1134. It really has sidetracked a lot of the progress that we were making, in that prior to that legislation and with the change of administration, there was information on the Department of Education website about cultural competency training and practices. And that information was shifted or taken down, and it may be back up by now, but at the last time I checked, it was not there. So we want to be sure that the state is doing what the legislative law says that they should be doing by providing guidelines for cultural competency training for not just teachers, but pre-service teachers as well. So there's a university connection. And we want to be sure that from pre-K all the way to acting service teachers who are actually in practice, they're receiving the training that they need in order to be culturally responsive and to respond to our plan. Carol, you want to add a little bit more?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kelley. We would like to see equity policies. Everything starts with the policy. So the state of Indiana needs to have a policy on the website that actually denotes that racial equity is a priority of the state. If that is not done, then everything continues as is, which means that we don't make it actually an emphasis and an urgency that we will no longer have those students that are at the bottom. And the ones at the bottom are students of color, but particularly Black students remain at the bottom with every measure of academic performance. So when Mr. Whittle asked, what do we want to see? We want to see policies on the website. We want to see it denoted as a priority for the state of Indiana by the governor and by the Department of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley and Ms. Craig. Our next question.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. Representative Porter.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to kind of bring up the rear on that for as a fiscal person. Eric, I think what we can ask the governor to do is, again, establish education fund formula for students of color. There's a piece of legislation that was done in Illinois and also California that put about $300 million into an account, like a trust fund, to help address education disparities and achievement and opportunities. So we have a $5 billion surplus at the point. We're $167 million over forecast for last month. We have the dollars to do that and go forth with that. And that's why we encourage the governor to do. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Representative Porter. That was very important. Are there any other questions?
I have one question. I can't figure out how to find the raised hand button.
We have you. Ms.
Okay,
Winfrey, go ahead.
awesome. So I've done so many stories where we talk about improving equity in Black and other minority communities. When it comes to education, can someone also chime in on the value of how improving equity for Black students improves equity across the board, not just for students of color, but white students and just everyone?
I think I could take that one. For example, we talked about the return on the investment with the pre-K and the kindergarten at the beginning. If we had because right now you have to be 7. 7 is the age of the law when you can, that's the last age to enter school. Well, we've lowered that age and changed that law and ensure that there is full day kindergarten, even though we know most students do attend kindergarten and offer full day pre-K. That's going to impact everyone. As a former English teacher, the thing that was the most frustrating was teaching 8th graders who are at the 2nd grade level. If we put the investment at the beginning, we won't have to spend all this money at the end remediating students in middle school and high school. So that return on investment will impact Black students as well as all students. And we also know students that strategies that help students that struggle are good best practices that serve all students well. And so we want to ensure that all students have high quality teachers and that they're taught in their strategies to deal with students who may be facing trauma to help them be resilient, because we're not asking to lower the expectations for Black students. There's nothing inherently wrong with Black students, but if the teachers don't have the best practices to deal with some of the barriers or situations that they face outside of school, then that is also a barrier to them. And when teachers have those best practices starting back in college, in the college setting that's being taught, then that can be implemented and that can help all kids, because some of the situations that Black students face are not unique to people who are Black. Those are some of the same situations that all students have. So I hope that answers your questions about what we can do for Black students that will also help all students.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Where's the icon that says I'm giving her a standing ovation, Ms. Shantae?
Okay. Ms. Winfrey, if I could just add to what Shantae just illustrated. At the Urban League, we do a lot of job training programs, and people come in with high school diplomas. But when we administer a TABE test, a test of adult basic education, most of the time, many of the times, their results come back between 5th and 6th grade. So when you make these initial investments, when they're quality improving programs, the quality level and the impact rises for all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Russell. Any other questions? If you can't find the raise hand button, just kind of just say something and you will be lit up.
I'd like to go back to Eric's question about what we expect the governor and the Department of Ed to do. We know that Kara Herring has been, that she's now a part of the governor's team in looking at equity, and she's doing a wonderful job. We're very proud of what she's doing. But we also feel that the Department of Ed needs a directed person who is looking at equity issues. I know that Senator Ford had legislation looking at an equity person from each district or school, but we believe that a statewide person at the Department of Ed would be tremendous benefit. Representative Porter had proposed legislation similar to that a few years ago. And so we believe that it's time now for that piece of legislation to come back, and that the Department of Ed have a direct person who is responsible with outlined duties and responsibilities for what it will take to implement the plan on the Department of Education's in their role.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley. If you check the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, at least bottom of my screen, if you click on that, then you'll see the raise hand feature. Any other questions? No other questions?
May I ask Senator Ford to comment on why he thought it was so important that the equity persons be at each school?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kelley. This actually was brought to me by students in one of the schools that I represent. And, their main genesis for it was, Senator Ford. It's important for us to see people that look like us in our school buildings. And I just feel the urge. I felt that sense of urge a couple years ago when I filed that bill. I still believe it today. And I think this plan that you all have very thoughtfully created addresses that, and I think that we need to continue to do that. And I would definitely support Representative Porter's bill on having a statewide person who can kind of quarterback that effort. Thank you, Dr. Kelley.
Thank you, Senator Ford. Any other comments or any other questions? We don't want to let this opportunity slip by.
Yes, I had one more question from Eric Weddle. I had one more question. Thanks. Thank you again for taking time to answer these. Hiring unrepresented teachers of color is a goal for many school districts and charter schools in Indianapolis and across the state for years now. And we know the pool of new teachers of color, especially those coming from Indiana colleges, is very small. And I know Senator Ford touched on this about funding, but I mean, how do you think the state can do more to try to attract those teachers to come here and work in Indiana, especially if they aren't from here?
I think, and thanks again, Eric, for your question. It's very multifaceted. However, one of the key strategies would be, as was mentioned earlier, has to do with salary. We are so far behind in terms of being able to recruit and have salaries that really work for the 21st century and beyond for young people. So I think we've got to do a much better job in being sure that we have those salaries that will actually draw young people in. However, there's another key factor, excuse me, that the research has shown, and that has to do with retention. We need to spend more time and more efforts on retaining the Black teachers that we do have, and there has not been enough publicity about that, or enough effort about that. Several years ago, I did some research on that and was able to determine that there are a couple of factors in addition to salary, and that has to do with working conditions. So we need to really study the working conditions in our schools and how can we better serve our teachers. And I think Keith could probably attest to that from ISTA, that we need to do a much better job. A lot of that has to do with the cultural mismatch that goes on. Cultural mismatch not only goes on with children, it goes on with adults. So that cultural competency work has to be really thorough. It has to be in depth. It has to be like, I'm going to plug the Indianapolis Public Schools because they have an in-depth racial equity program for all staff, where all staff are required to participate. And then I'm sure we have a couple of other school districts around the state, but we need to be more intentional about that.
I couldn't agree more with those comments. And we have to, if we're wanting to attract folks to Indiana, we have to have an Indiana that folks want to come to. And when you have legislation such as we had introduced this past year, you are not creating an Indiana which will foster a place that people want to come and live, start a family, and to become a Hoosier. And so we have to recognize that it is multifaceted. It is, where are you teaching? What are those working conditions? What are those salaries? Certainly bringing folks in, but you also want to be able to have a place where you can find community, where you can see yourself finding a spouse, raising your family, and spending your life here, being a part of it. I think we also have to do a better job at the high school level of having meaningful conversations with our students of colors about becoming educators and really fostering them from that early age, that they have the abilities and the talents to go into education, and to encourage them and to help them get into our higher education system, and to help them become a teacher and come back into our communities. Now, that's a long-term goal on that, and that's not going to solve it immediately. But something that we certainly want to make sure that we're doing alongside all of the other work.
Thank you, Keith. I want to tap on, oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, because we have several people who are kind of like waiting right now. If we can, Carol, unless it's burning for you.
That's fine.
Okay, Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, one of the issues that we have here in Northwest Indiana, is particularly Gary, is that there's a number of charter schools, and we know that Indiana has done such a terrific job at the laws with charter schools, where Indiana laws that they don't cap charter schools, charter school growth. We have multiple authorizers. We also there also is a fair amount of autonomy and accountability with charter schools. However, given those variables, we're leading the nation and the laws that support charter schools, but at the same time, it's creating kind of an inequity in certain communities, especially in Gary, Indiana, where our charter schools are not faring as well as our traditional public schools, right? But yet, when we look at the dollars that go into that, charter schools have really a lot of favorable programs and things have been put there. For instance, charter schools were with the Common School Loan Fund. Charter schools, Common School Loan Funds were forgiven a little while ago, yet the public schools, Common School Loan Funds weren't forgiven, and that created this this discrepancy, or it created some issues, especially with our traditional public schools, with them having significant debt. But also, when we look at it from a teacher perspective, a lot of times the charter schools don't have the same requirements for teachers as traditional schools, where charter schools, they have an inordinate amount of teachers on emergency permits. Yet the traditional public schools have teachers that they mostly look for teachers that are highly qualified teachers that have those their teacher licenses in certain subject areas. So that creates not only an inequity amongst the teachers, but it also creates a inequity in the type of education that happens with our students. I think that as a state and state governed education body, that really needs to be looked at and try to figure out how do we level that playing field to make sure that whether our child goes to a charter school or traditional public school, that they're have a equal chance of getting a great education, number one, and number two, that the person that's in front of them is also highly qualified to ensure that to ensure the probability that great instruction will be delivered, thus making the chances for college and career opportunities that much greater, right? So we won't have those eighth graders not being able to read, or students graduating from high school without a Core 40 diploma. We want our students to have, like I said, the best opportunities to succeed after their K-12 experience. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Janice LaVelle.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Barbara. I wanted to speak to the fact that, I'm sorry, I had something else on. Let me turn this off. In Southern Indiana, Greater Clark County Schools, I'm a part of the foundation board, and we are in the process of developing a minority scholarship to recruit teachers and to fund their education. I think that we are diligently working to pursue the goals, and this document will help us to implement that. We have already come up with funding from the Greater Clark County Foundation Board of $25,000. We are actively recruiting $25,000 more from the Greater Clark County school system, and we're trying to come up with $25,000 from the Bells Foundation in our area. So we are well ahead of this plan in recruiting and giving scholarships and finding those in college who are interested in education. So I wanted to get that out there so people will know that there are school districts that are interested in doing this. And this is Greater Clark County found in Southern Indiana, Jeffersonville in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on deck, we have Senator Ford, Shante Barnes, Mark Russell, and then Representative Porter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I'll just be really brief. I just wanted to kind of just add in my comments. I totally agree with Ms. Craig about the salary, but I also want to say that it's also about the respect that we as legislators in the General Assembly give and show by the legislation that we put out. And so I think, as I travel and I talk with, young folks who are, thinking about the teaching profession, they say to me, Senator Ford, why would I go into a profession where I'm being micromanaged by all of you in the General Assembly? So I think that that's one way we can show teachers and people who are wanting to entering the teaching profession that we truly care, is that we should be in the classrooms getting an understanding of what's really happening in our state. So I would just want to add that salary is important, but also the respect piece as well. You're absolutely right about working conditions, Mr. Gamble. I had a bill on that this session, didn't get a hearing. And these are the things that I think that, we're getting sidetracked. These are the real issues that can have a huge improvement for our teachers in our state. And the last thing I'll close with and say is that the William A. Crawford Teacher Scholarship, I think, needs to be really advocated for and really marketed better. There's money in that account right now for our folks to get that scholarship. I think it's a great tool to help get some of our teachers of color the financial resources and also retain them to keep them in our state to teach for the next 3 years after they receive that scholarship. Thank you.
What's the name of that scholarship?
That's the William A. Crawford Teacher Minority Scholarship, and that's through the Commission for Higher Education.
Shante Barnes.
I'll add a few points, and I won't repeat any points that's already been mentioned. Shout out to IPS. I was invited to Charles Fairbanks School 105 for their career day. And throughout my whole childhood, when we had career days, there was never a teacher at career day. So we want kids to grow up to be teachers. We actually have to have them at the career day. So I actually got to talk to those students, fourth grade and fifth graders, about why I became a teacher. Because a lot of times you interact with teachers every day, but they don't talk to you about why this is my profession. Why did I choose this as a role? The second thing I would point out, shout out to Lawrence Township, I was invited to do cadet teaching. I was not trying to be a teacher. I was actually going to be an accountant or an actuary. And I had a teacher say, you should join this cadet teaching program. And had I not been asked by a teacher or being told to consider this, I would have never considered education. The third point I will add is, if the school system is failing you, why would you come back to teach there? So the plan will help itself. If we help kids achieve more, then they will be more willing to come back. Now, there are some Black teachers that have come back to teach because the system failed them. And then the last thing I'll say, I taught at IUPUI. I currently supervise E&L student teachers. And some of those teachers, Black student teachers in particular, cannot pass the licensing exam. Now, I do believe they need to be able to do that, but we don't put the supports in place in the college setting to make sure that the teachers have the skills to pass these licensing exams to come back to the school. And then I'm a Black educator. There's 11 school districts, charter school networks. We get people reach out to us mid-year to say, hop to this school. So until we have pay equity, I'll just go for the highest paycheck, especially if I want to be married and have kids. Sometimes it's not about being loyal to a school. It's like, I need to feed my own babies. So I think the competition is good per se, but the bad thing about it is I can hop to another school district and every school wants to say that, oh, we hired Black teachers, so I'm going to directly reach out to you. Every time I've ever had offered a job, I've always been offered 2 more. And sometimes I don't even interview for the job. That's how desperate people are to not only get teachers, but to get Black teachers in their school.
Thank you so much, Ms. Barnes. Mr. Russell.
Yeah, real quick. I was just going going to add, sometimes we don't even need the state to do things. There was a program years ago, as one of my volunteers informed me several weeks ago. There's a program years ago within IPS where paraprofessionals in the classroom were recruited to become professional teachers. So we need approaches like that that are innovative and using people already in the system to elevate them. They've already demonstrated an interest or affinity for education. And then maybe the state can fund those efforts to get them their professionalized degrees. I was just going to mention that. Great question, Eric.
Thank you so much, Greg. Representative Porter, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, thank you very much. I think one thing that we also had to remember, some of us has been around for a while, is that during the Daniels administration and the Bennett administration, teachers were constantly attacked. Public education was attacked and teachers were, and so therefore it was very hard and difficult for educators who want to stay in a profession that everything they did was wrong. So it's very, at that point, and it spills over now, for 2 or 3 years and even to today. And we got to look at going down to historical Black colleges and universities and bringing those educators up to Indiana and attract them. Because as I remember coming up, I knew my HBCU teachers recruited other HBCU teachers to come. So people do things for people also, and because they know those individuals. And Dr. Barnes, the last in regards to the licensing, that was a robust discussion about 4 years ago with Dr. Vernon Smith and others about the licensing, and people were not able to pass it. They were missing by 1 or 2 points. But there was really not a lot of provisions put in to assist those individuals. I'm not talking about someone missing by 5, 10, 15 points. I'm talking about there was a mass of individuals that were missing it by 1 or 2 points. And so that was very discouraging. So those are my observations that have transpired over the last few years. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Representative Porter. I have nobody else on deck. Let me make one comment. My mother was a school teacher for about 30-something years in the city of Gary. But even before it, she, of course, was my first teacher. But I developed relationships with other teachers along the way. I was very good friends with my 2nd and 3rd grade teacher, who I told her she got a promotion from 2nd grade so that she could be my teacher in 3rd grade as well. And I contrast that to the situation with my husband, who's from Chicago, and he can't even remember the name of a teacher that he had, growing up in Chicago. So we have to continue to respect teachers, not just the legislators, but we as a community, we have to respect teachers. And when we do that, because it continues to be a noble profession, but they tell you it's a noble profession so that you won't feel bad because they're not paying you. It needs to be a noble profession and one that is compensated as well. So thank you all for being here. I think that we all got something out of this, although we play different roles in this, but we have the same goal and the heart for this project, for this plan, for our children together. And that has to be and is the foundation for improving the outcomes for Black children in the state of Indiana. So I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Have a good weekend. They tell me it's going to be 70 degrees today in Gary. I'm going to enjoy that. And again, I just want to say, let's be out there and be cheerleaders for the Indiana Black Academic Excellence Plan. It starts with you. Remember that word of mouth? Go out and tell somebody who can tell somebody who can tell somebody who can also ask God. Thank you so much.